what is the mechanic behind it? So usually we start by defining a brand identity and a promise. We start to set out the vision and the promise. And this is the moment of truth. The delivery gap says that 80% of the companies believe that they provide a superior proposition, but only 8% of their customers actually agree. When we do workshops and meetings, we always try to bring together the different perspectives. What people report us back is often that they say the actual outcome of these meetings is the mutual understanding and the alignment. Understanding these real customer needs and issues, you can really focus your resources on the right things. I'm very suspicious around the NPS because you just measure how it's perceived or if it was good or bad, but not what's behind it. You build up the brand through the experience or through the service and not vice versa.
It's my pleasure to welcome you all again here to this event of the Swiss Service Design Network, where we will speak about branding and service design and how they mix together. And to speak about that, we have a lovely, smart, great guest with us who is Valentina. Valentina is a Swiss creative consultant and service design practitioner with a love for branding. Valentina Röschli is a creative consultant at FutureWorks, where she uses the power of service design to serve organizations that want to achieve their business goals by making their offering more relevant, tangible, and attractive to their customers. But before that, Valentina worked as a copywriter and consultant, both in consultancies and in-house. So it's my pleasure to say hello, Valentina. So nice to see you here.
Hello, Daniele. Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Such a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. The stage is all yours, and we are very happy to learn from you.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to share a personal topic. I feel it's like the connection of the two things is a personal story, and it's also a story that we work on at FutureWorks. And I'm also super happy, like afterwards in the Q&A, like to hear your perspectives and yeah, to hear what you have to say for on this topic. And what I'm offering here is my experience and my point of view, or the point of view of FutureWorks also. And yes, very happy to discuss this afterwards as well. So I'm sharing. It works, right? Good, perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you might wonder why I'm showing this crappy image. I just want to introduce what is this topic or what is this connection of the two fields actually all about. And I didn't want to start. There's so many examples, and I'm sure you have all your own examples in mind. But it caught my attention. It's like I took this picture from the train when I went to Lucerne, and not because of this fancy look, but because of the promise that Erdem Kebab makes. I hope you can see it. It says the best, and I was like, okay, that's a bold one. And the point I want to make is I can only test or prove if that promise comes true if I go there and really have the kebab, right? The point I want to make here is that the brand actually comes to life through the experience that I have and not through what has been defined or what they write on their website, on their store, etc., etc. And if this kebab, I mean, if this is really the best and if it's really true what they promise, then this branding, you could say not a lot of effort has been put into this branding, but then this might even fit, right? Because it's the super authentic experience that you have there. You can tell that they put all their efforts into making the best kebab in town. And then this not big effort might even fit this experience or this brand. So I hope with this story, I could actually already make my point that the two perspectives really need to work together and that the brand might even be a product of this experience that we have. So branding and service design, I would like to talk about why and how they are connected, what is the challenge that we have, and how can we bridge the gap. And I feel what I've prepared is for many of you, I guess, a reminder of maybe on what we should focus on and what we should pay attention to. And before I jump to the topic, I would actually like to frame my perspective. And thank you, Daniele, that you already introduced me, so I can make this really short. I have a background in business communication, so this is the bachelor that I did 20 years ago. And I worked as a copywriter in branding and advertising agencies. This is where I actually discovered my love for creativity and also the power of creativity. So this is where I'm coming from. And through the years, I could take over more and more strategic projects and also dive into research. I could lead research projects. I had the opportunity to do this, which for me actually uncovered my love for research and for understanding who we are doing this for and who we are communicating to. And I worked in different roles in the last 20 years as a consultant, as a design researcher, and as a copywriter. And I think trying to bridge all these things is what shapes me as a professional and is my personal story. And I think it's only 3 years ago that I found a name for what I'm passionate about and what I'm actually doing, and it's service design. I really had this moment of revelation, or where I found this is it. This is what I want to do, and this is what I'm passionate about, and this is where the value comes from, and everything. And so now I'm doing this master program in service design, where I also got to know Daniele, thankfully. And also, I think my story, so since I am in this community and since I talk to people at conferences and at events, I realized that like many people have similar stories like mine. And I feel bridging the things is a way of finding purpose and looking for impact through your work. This is something that I feel in very good company in this community. And I'm curious to hear your stories, but I heard lots of similar stories since I am in this field. And at FutureWorks, I'm also super lucky to work with people that have a similar mindset and that work on the same topic. So we share this wish for bridging stuff, for bringing things together. And two of these people are also in the call today. So maybe later on you can even like share, yeah, you can please contribute also to what we are doing here together. That's what I want to say. Also, you already mentioned FutureWorks. We are a creative consultancy. At the bottom, you can see a couple of the clients we work for. We work for big clients, we work for small clients that are based in Switzerland, but also acting internationally. And you already read our promise out loud. It's making offerings more relevant, tangible, and attractive to customers. And I see in the relevance, you can see more the service design perspective, and in the attractiveness, you can see maybe more the branding perspective. So bringing these things together to the business value of our customers. This is actually our promise. And if we act on this, you need to ask our clients, right? It's our promise. This is what we say, the best. Okay, so just so that you understand where we come from and where I am arguing from. So it's really this consultancy perspective, this agency perspective. All right, now what's going on here? So what's the connection between the two fields? And I tried to visualize this here with this loop. And just after I created this slide, I realized that the Service Design Network has exactly this as a logo, right? So either it's super obvious, or this is really what it is about, right? To create this loop of things coming together. But what is the mechanic behind it? So usually we start by defining a brand identity and a promise. So we start to set out a vision and a promise. But in the first place, and usually we do not start from scratch, right? We have we work with a brand that has a heritage, that comes with values, with a history, and we need to incorporate that into what we define for the future. But in the first place, it's a vision. And it's not out in the world yet. It's just what we defined it could be. And of course, customer insights, everything go into this promise. And this defines then the service development. So it defines the standards that we want to achieve. It defines the services that we offer. It defines the features that we offer. It defines how this experience should work or should come to life in the real world. And the promise also informs the customer expectations. So if I read the best or if I read something on the website, this creates an expectation for me as a customer. And not only this, but also previous interactions with the brand or what I hear from friends and family, all this creates the customer expectations. And then the service interaction happens. And this is the moment when the shit goes down, if I can say it like that. This is the moment of truth if we really act on our promise. And what I experience there then shapes the brand perception loyalty. So if I come back as a customer, what I say about this brand, etc. So this brand perception loyalty is the moment when the business value is created and not before. This is the moment. And then everything gets measured nowadays, which is great. And this again informs then the brand identity and the promise. So if we need to adapt something, we can go on like this. So everything that we learn from the market, everything we learn from these interactions, if they work or not, then again go into the loop. And this is how the two the two perspectives work together. This brand promise informs how we want to shape our services. And on the other hand, the service delivery needs to fulfill the brand promise. And only then this loop works and the business value is created. But there's an issue because the two fields are often treated as separate entities. And this is due to different perspectives on the same thing, I would say, on the customer experience, because branding focuses on differentiation and creates a promise, as I just said. And service design, on the other hand, focuses on the relevance and designs these interactions. So it's two different perspectives on the same thing. And often in companies, they're also treated in different teams. And it's a promise, and it's super complex how this works within companies. But what we see is that companies often they promise something that does not come true in reality. So there's a gap. This is what we know as the delivery gap. This is the consequence of this separation. And I'm sure you all know the delivery gap because it's super well known and it's also really old. It's 20 years old, right? When Bain and Company conducted this study and published this report, the delivery gap says that 80% of the companies believe that they provide a superior proposition, but only 8% of their customers actually agree, which means the companies think that they do great work and they deliver this great experience, but the customers, they don't see it this way. And this is what still, even though it's old, what we are still working on and what we try to bridge and what we try to close. And it's really not easy. But still, I try to come up with a couple of suggestions, like coming from observations that we have from our consultancy work, what we can do about this. And it's a big topic. Everyone that is in tries to work on this. It's a strategic topic and it's also a leadership topic. But sometimes we are not in the position to define the strategy, or we are not the leaders in these companies. But I think even when we are working on smaller projects, we have things that we can do, or we have small things that we can try to implement, or we can try to ask for, let's say. And 4 of these suggestions I brought with me. So the first one is not a small one. It's actually the focus of the two fields, and I would say it's a superpower of the two fields. So on the left side, branding, the superpower is to understand what makes your brand unique, authentic, and credible. So this understanding of who we are and what we can do differently than others, this deep understanding is super important. And on the other hand, we have service design, and here I would say the superpower is to understand the most relevant moments for our most valuable customers. I wrote the sentence, but it's a bit complicated, sorry. But what I want to say is to focus, to understand, and then to focus on this, to focus all our resources on this is super important. And not to treat them in these separate silos, but really to try and create this mutual understanding of who we are and what we stand for and who we are doing this for. So how can we create value for our customers? And I just give you a small example from my private life. And as I said, I'm sure you have all your own stories and examples of the delivery gap in your minds because we really experience it all the time. But my health insurance is their promise is to be the health insurance for families, right? And a couple of years ago, so I would say with this promise, I'm the core target group of this. And a couple of years ago, they set out their digital platform. Like you have now, every insurance has a digital platform where you can deal with your invoices and everything. And when I tried to set this up for me and for my kids, I discovered that their system doesn't cover my case, because in my case we have two different bank accounts, and their system doesn't allow me to log in with one account and then deal everyone who's actually in my family to do this with one login. And this was the moment when I was like, and I had a couple of phone calls with them to make sure I got this right. So I really need 2 logins, and it gets even worse. I need 2 different devices to log in. Short story, but what I want to say here is that they set out a promise, but they're not able to act on it. And this is an example for the delivery gap, right? And it's huge, but I think still in our daily work, like to remind us who we stand for and who we do this for is super important and really helps to close this gap. The second one is also not a small one. it's working together, and it's all about this orchestrating the organization. That tons of articles on this are out there. But what I observe in my work is that this collaboration does not happen often, and this is a problem. So for branding, I'd suggest work with your colleagues from CX and product teams, and for service design, I'd suggest work with your colleagues from brand communications and marketing team. It's super simple and it sounds really obvious, but I can tell you from my work, when we do workshops and meetings, we always try to bring together the different perspectives. We try to involve people from different parts of the organization when we work on certain topics. And what people report us back is often that they say the actual outcome of these meetings is the mutual understanding and the alignment, and they had the different, that to understand the other side, and not what we actually created. So not the artifact that you created in this workshop or meeting, but that they were able to talk together. So just pay attention to this. And even though it sounds so obvious, I think we're really not there. We really need to work on this. And so that's what I want to say. Force this collaboration in your daily work. The third one goes into the same direction. What I mean is sharing knowledge. So for branding, for example, it means share your brand elements. I don't only mean what's on Frontify, but also, as I said, what's our values, what's our promise, what makes us unique. So share this within the company. And for example, also brand tracking data can have really valuable insights for CX teams, service design teams, etc. Because often we ask how the services are perceived in the markets, and we can draw really valuable insights from that. And on the other hand, service design, who has a lot of research insights and creates personas and journeys, for example, from that, also make sure that this doesn't stay in your little team, but make sure that it's spread across the organization or across like the teams that need to be aware of this or can act on it as well. And again, an observation from our work is lately we were working on a subject or on a question. And when we asked for data on the subject, so what has already been done before on that, we discovered that there has been conducted a study exactly on that topic that we were working on. And so our question was, so how was the outcome? What did you do with that data? How can we build on this? Because this is for us super important. We do not come in and start from scratch. We always build on something. And no one in the room could answer that question. So this is what is just one example. I observed that lots and lots of data are gathered and collected. And maybe sometimes people feel when the data is here, the work is done, but this is not the case. When the data is here, the work just starts because we need to make sense of the data. We need to interpret the data, and we really need to act on the data. That's why we collect the data. And as I said, it's often the data just stays in the little team and is not shared across the company. So this would be my suggestion. Share your data that you gather and ask for data as well. And the last one is more an aspirational one, I would say. So I thought about how can the two perspectives inspire one another, and how can we do our work better as brand specialists or as service designers. And for brand, I would say the powerful question to ask would be what the real customer needs and issues are, because I feel you can learn a lot from that in terms of that, like brand and marketing, they are often focused on what can we do differently, what can we add, right? What else do we need to do? Focus on this differentiation. But sometimes, as we see in the delivery gap, the company like fails on delivering on the basics. And so understanding these real customer needs and issues, you can really focus your resources on the right things. And through these insights, you can also probably tap as a brand into new fields and into new customer segments, identify new customer segments. Taking this perspective on as brands could be really valuable. On the other hand, service design should ask, how can we incorporate our unique identity into the customer experience? Because services get more and more similar, especially in fields like insurance, as I already mentioned, or in the finance sector, services get very similar. And it's hard as a brand to distinguish their experience from others. And I think here's an opportunity to find out how can we do it differently, maybe also for ideation. So if we think, okay, we're doing this properly, we are making it really easy for our customers, but maybe what else could we do to make this service and this experience differently than others? And this again has a value in it, right? And just a short example also from my private life, this is also not a future client, but it's Galaxus is, I think, the biggest e-commerce platform in Switzerland. And it's for everyone who's not from Switzerland, it's like Amazon in the rest of the world. And their promise is, or their claim is, almost everything for almost everyone. No focus, no, not really narrow. They're delivering for lots and lots of people. And 2 years ago, what I found interesting as an example here, 2 years ago, they went into mobile communication or telecommunication. And they could deliver on their promise even in this completely new field. Not very obvious that e-commerce and telecommunications go together. But in this new field, they could deliver on their promise almost everything for almost everyone by making a super simple, super straightforward offering with 3 products that is extremely easy to grasp, extremely like simple, down to earth. And I think with that, they can cover, I don't know, maybe 80% of the needs that people actually have. So again, they could deliver on their promise in a completely new field. And this is what I want to say. So how can we inspire? How can we find opportunities by taking over the other perspective? And with that, I would say it's not easy bridging branding and service design, but if we manage to do it, then the case and the proposition of it is that we contribute to closing this delivery gap and create value, not only for businesses, but especially for people. And I hope I could give you some hints on how to do this in our daily work, because I feel we're really trying hard and we're really aspirational on that. Thank
Thank you so much. Obviously, a round of silent applause as we are all
you.
muted. I really appreciate your take on how to bridge disciplines. I think, as you said in the introduction, it's beautiful when people can use their past lives and bridge all of the aspects that they have explored and then suddenly bring it together, be it being a home gardener and bringing it with service design, or being a copywriter and then use that also in those approaches. So I'm very curious for the questions of the people that are here, and we already have one. So what I will do is I will use all the questions from the chat and I will read them out loud. But if you have a question and you are happy to ask the question directly with your voice and face, then please just raise your hand in the feature of Zoom and I'll come to you. We have a first question for you, which is, first of all, some congratulations. Thank you so much, Valentina. With metrics, what metrics can measure whatever your service experience matches your brand messaging? Do you have some thoughts around this idea of metrics that cover both service design and branding?
What we talk about, or I'm very, how can I say this? I'm very suspicious around, for example, the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, let's say, because with metrics like the Net Promoter Score, you just measure how it's perceived or if it was good or bad, but not what's behind it. And I think what's super important is that we understand the why behind the data. And so that we can really act on it. If we have an NPS and we say, okay, I take again this kebab example because it's super easy, and they ask me when I go out, is it good or bad? And I say it's bad. And then what do they do with this measure? They know, okay, I wasn't satisfied, but I do not know why. And so I think it's very important to combine KPIs or the metrics with qualitative data, and to find out what is truly behind the metrics, I feel. So I cannot suggest a certain metric that would combine both, because as I said, brand works with NPS, brand works with brand trackers, for example, that also contains qualitative data. But usually I feel you really need to dive into people's experiences and find out the why behind the KPIs. I think that's the answer that I would give.
Thank you so much. I think that's quite a beautiful way of adding the why question to any of these metrics. With the smart people, you see some smart companies use the NPS because it's quite quick and efficient, and then they have the but why did you say
Exactly.
that? And I think there you can then go quite deeply. So I really appreciate that aspect. Thanks so much. We have Juliana. Let us know your question.
Hello, Valentina. For me, the question was more about because you were speaking about metrics, but do you have some tools or frameworks that you use to make sure that the service experience reflects the brand
Mhm.
story? Sorry.
I know it's a perfect question. There are tons of frameworks out there, I have to say, and we work with different frameworks. We often work with journeys for sure. And I think in the end, I mean, there's also the concept out there that we need to design the whole organization along the customer journey. So this would be, I don't know, I know organizations that try to go there, but it's really hard to switch the whole organizational structure to be aligned on this end-to-end processes and on these customer focus. But I think this would be, I really want to dive into this even more and try to work with organizations on that, because we see that they are usually still structured in silos and in these little teams, and that's my whole point, right? Talking to each other, sharing data across these silos. But if these silos disappear, so what's the alternative? Then the alternative would be organize along the journey and really flip the whole organization so they can serve the customers that you've identified, like your most valuable customers. Other frameworks that we work with is the Kano model. I don't know if you know this one. It says basically it's a pyramid, and it says at the bottom you have the basic needs, in the middle you have the performance factors, and on top you have the excitement factors. And what you need to do is, as a brand or as a company, you need to understand these basic factors, these hygiene factors, we say in German. I don't know if that's an English word I can use, but it's like the basics that you need to deliver so that your customers are not frustrated. It's about, if you do not deliver on these, customers will be frustrated. Then you have the performance, yeah, exactly. And on top, it's these excitement factors that you need to really understand, like what is going to be an excitement for me as a customer. So this would be another model that I could suggest. Yeah, and there's other models out there, but these are the two that I would say we regularly work with. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So we move to the next question from the chat. Someone says, thanks, Valentina. What's your view on customer experience experts, not brand, not service designer, about bridging the gap in mutual understanding and delivery?
Can you read the question again?
Yes,
It's sorry.
and I can also reframe it a little bit
Yeah,
in
please,
the
maybe.
understanding
Yeah.
that I have. So, what's your view on how CX experts, customer
Hmm.
experience experts, can also bridge the gap in mutual understanding and delivery with, for example, branding people? So, as
Hmm.
customer experience is not exactly the same thing as service
Yes.
design, how do you
Yes.
see customer experience people working
Yeah.
well with branding and maybe customer experience people working well with service design?
Yeah. I don't know what your experience or where this question exactly comes from, but as you could understand in my talk, maybe I do not make this big distinction between service design and customer experience. And also, I don't know how it's in other countries, but in Switzerland, I don't know any company that has a service design team. Some have, of course, but the companies we work with, like team is called CX or product. This is the place where service design happens. So this is just on the like namings and stuff. So I do not care too much about the namings, I have to say. I feel it's a lot of times we are just talking about the same things, I would say. And so I have no other suggestions other than these what I showed. We need to work together and we need to try to align by talking to each other, by sharing the data, by creating this mutual understanding of who we are and who we design for. I think I could not give any other suggestion on that.
Yeah, and depending on the country and how people define experience versus service design, it's always a bit of a difficult thing. But I know that in some regions, people have this distinction where service design also has a big focus on like the logistical stuff, the backstage stuff.
Mm.
In some countries, again, they would make the difference where customer experience is much more about the focus on the customer and less on how it's made. And in these cases, again, depending on the country, then a good question for a customer experience guy to a service design guy is, okay, but how do we manage that in the backstage? Like, how do we make it so that employees don't want to kill themselves while they have to make this happen? But I think in general, one beautiful way of thinking about it is, as you said, I think, Valentina, is to ask the question, what do you need? in your world? What is really important for you in your world? And that works for IT, that works for HR, that works for everyone. Just asking the question. And as you also showed, sharing the things that you are excited about, where you say, oh, we learned about that. I think that could help you guys too. I think having this genuine kind of excitement of what you learned in your field and sharing it further can also be something that is quite supporting.
One thing that I want to add, but not to this question, but in general, I need to remind myself of the things that I just said all the time because we forget so quickly, and we are in our work and we try to deliver. We have deadlines, etc. We have nitty-gritty stuff that we need to deal with, and we super easily forget about the higher level of things. And today I'm fully aware that I showed a super high level of the topic, but it's a reminder to myself and in the end to all of us that what we are actually doing here. Yeah.
Absolutely. And these are important principles or big ideas to have somewhere on a sticky note next to our screen to remember what we're trying to do indeed. We have another question from Layli joining us from Iran. The stage is yours.
Thank you for the insightful topic and presentation. I have a question about how does your role as an in-house service designer differ from consultancies in this issue? Have you found one environment to offer more leverage for aligning branding and service design?
I can just talk from this consulting perspective because I didn't have the other role. I'm since a long time and in this agency field, so that's why I mainly have this external perspective on things. But of course, I do work with CX people in companies. And the question was about the leverage, right? So I think what we can bring in as an agency is always this outside perspective and probably experiences with other clients that we had. We can bring in this. I think this is one of our biggest assets that we can bring in. On the other hand, like people that are working in the organization, they really have the leverage on being on this topic for months and years, because we as an agency, we often have a budget and we have a project. We come in and we do the work and then we go out. And this is frustrating sometimes because we do not see what happened afterwards. How was the impact? Sometimes we have, at FutureWorks, we have clients that we work with for years, over years, right? Again and again. But often it's a very project-based work. And it's super interesting because you can apply stuff that you've learned over there, you can apply here, but you never get to the nitty-gritty stuff that needs to be done in the end, which is super important. So again, I think both is needed. If you're only in this little, I don't know, are you in-house or are you in-house, I guess? Or what is your role?
Both of them. But as a consultant, it is super difficult, I think, to align these two things together.
Yes, I would fully agree on that, because you need to talk to the right people within the organization. If you need to talk to someone who has decision power, and if you're aligned with this person on what needs to be done and that things need to be aligned, then you have a big chance on having an impact. But if you're working in a small team that has not really connection to leader, or you feel that it's not aligned, then it's going to be really hard.
Thank you sharing your experience.
And we have a question from someone else in the chat who asks, what happens when great service doesn't match brand positioning? Do we change the brand promise or change the service? That's a nasty question. I like it.
Remember the kebab example that I showed. So let's assume, because I haven't been there and tried it, so let's assume this kebab is really great, but the brand is not, it's nothing special, it's nothing fancy. Then the question is, do I need to do something about it? Maybe not, because this is exactly the message that I want to give. But the question is, if it's not in line, right? So if the brand is not in line with the service, if there is a problem, then you need to do something about it. But if there's no problem, why should you take action? I always like to see it from this perspective. With everything we do, we try to create value. And if there's, my question back would be, what is the problem?
Yeah, and I think you showed something quite strong in the start was this loop thing, where there is this thing where you deliver something, at least you have a promise in mind of that you want to keep, and then you see if it works, it doesn't work. And sometimes you will have this moment of thinking, shit, we made it too big of a promise. Let's use a promise. Or sometimes it's just, we really want that promise and we need to change something. In my personal experience, I would say it's usually easier to reduce the promise. It's a good thing in general to have very low promises and have quite beautiful experiences out that come after. That's something that is quite life. But I see how your graph is giving us this idea of saying that data, that piece of feedback can really serve both teams and could be an interesting point where why choose? Maybe it's both a reduction of the promise and a betterment of the experience. And then you have a better experience kind of moment where people then come from, oh, they promised A and we got A, B, and C. Wow, Valentina, that's a great service.
It's also interesting if you, like, we work mainly for established companies, right? As you could see, but if you work at a startup, you need to build up that brand. So then you start with the service or whatever it might be, with the product or whatever it might be, and you need to build up that brand. And this is just another, like the loop that I showed. I said we start with the brand promise, but maybe it's the other way around. You start with the offering, and then you need to build up that brand. But again, I think you build up the brand through the experience or through the service and not vice versa. And yeah.
Indeed. And I'd be curious to know. So you're someone who has many different lives. You've been a copywriter, you're a mom, you're like someone very involved in the community, you work in branding, you work in service design. What is something maybe from your past career in copywriting where you say, this saves my butt so much when I do service design work, where it's the skill that you see that maybe classical service designers you look at and say, I can do that. You can't. Are there things like that where you say, oh, this is something that service designers could learn and would be benefiting them?
Yeah, I have two things in mind. So the first one is what I would say, no bullshit. Like I think I'm this kind of no bullshit person. And this comes really from my work writing lots and lots of stuff. And also what do I mean with this no bullshit? What I mean is that I can't write a text or a headline if I don't understand the subject. You can, but I was always like, my aspiration was always to understand what I'm doing here and to try to really dive into this topic, and then through the text or whatever craft, right, you try to bring it to life. And so this, I really want to understand what this is all about. I think this is why research spoke so much to my soul, because it's this understanding and trying to dive into a topic. So this, I think it's what I learned in copywriting. Understand what you're saying, and then the rest will come by itself. And the other thing that comes to mind is what I said with the creativity in advertising. Like, it's always this couple of copywriter and designer that work together on a creative concept or on a creative idea. And you always, like when I write headlines or when I write copy in this field, I try to find this creative moment, this moment of surprise, this moment of, now I have you. And this is all about storytelling. And I think also this is, again, I'm trying again and again to do this. I'm not always successful with that, but that's the aspiration, that I offer something that catches attention and that offers a surprise or that offers a thought or that offers something. And I would see this as the creative part of copywriting. And I think these two things I take over into the service design life.
I love it, especially when we have always this idea in service design. For years, there was this idea, oh, seamless experiences. It has to be perfectly functional, etc. And one quality that comes from copywriting that I see a lot in copywriters is that, no, don't do it seamless. It's going to be boring. Add some lows, add some highs. And I think it's quite interesting to also think about the surprise element, where in service design, we're like, no, don't surprise people. Let them know everything that comes so that they are reassured. It's like too much babysitting. And the copywriter will be like, hey, if it's a good story, there is a bit of a surprise suddenly, something that comes out of a box. And really love this approach that we can bring a bit more playfulness, more creativity back in that seamless, perfect experience. Wonderful. We have other questions, and now we have a very romantic question, which is, was there a moment in your career where you thought, this is why I love combining branding with service design? Or maybe you received a very happy feedback that motivated you a lot. Do you remember what was that spark that made you want to bring that duo together?
Yes, there was definitely a moment, and it was a project. It was a project that I conducted 6 or 7 years ago. I think that kind of changed my career a little bit. And again, it's happening again and again. The project was about, we were commissioned with the question of how can we attract, it was about a profession, it was about a certain profession, and they do not find enough people anymore. And the question was, how can we attract the people, or what's the problem actually out there that we do not get these people anymore? Or because, yeah, they need the people to do the jobs, right? And they don't find them anymore. So this shortage, how can we overcome this? And there was a question from marketing. And it was not from service design, or it was like, what can we do with communication to overcome this problem? And we conducted a huge piece of research, which was interesting. I think it was my first really big research project. And the outcome of that research was that we can do stuff with communication, but not only. So it's not enough to just do a campaign or just say that it's this way. You really need to make people feel it. And I think this was a huge point in my perception of what communication can do. And I do not want to make it small, because I still believe in the connection of the two things. I see the strength of both, and I hope I could make my point today on that. But it was, for me, the moment when I saw, okay, impact, we need to find where's the impact. And probably a campaign is not the answer. And then we need to go look somewhere else. And I think this was a huge moment in my career when I found out, okay, maybe I need to look somewhere else for opportunities to have impact. And also it's much more interesting, like to look for where's the solution, and not, we want to change that, let's do a campaign, but we want to change that, what do we need to do?
That's a beautiful love story that you gave us here. So I imagine that there are a few people who are coming from more service design background watching this, and they say, oh, this is good, I want more. What are your suggestions for people who are maybe new to branding, copywriting, communications, on maybe books, people to follow, websites, podcasts? Is there some places where you say these are interesting ways to get slowly started in that world that give you like a first Google search so that you kind of can get started?
That's
And
a
you're
tough
allowed to
one.
use your peers from
Yes, please.
FutureWorks.
I just wanted to say, my two colleagues from FutureWorks, Lotta and Philip, please feel free to share. And I mean, everyone else who's in the call who has great resources to share. I think I need to really, I don't know, because since I'm so long in this field and I see how fragmented it has become, I must say, if you wanna find out on branding in general, there's tons of stuff out there on LinkedIn and stuff. And of course, it's always hard to distinguish the good content. You need to really, finding orientation in this field is really hard. But then it gets super fragmented with social media and all that stuff, where I have to say I'm not an expert on that. So maybe, I don't know if other people have resources to share here, like how to start or how to dive. And I'm also offering to contact me on LinkedIn, and I can see if I can find something where we can just have a chat or whatever. So I can offer this, but like spontaneously, I have no suggestion here. Maybe someone else.
So as people slowly prepare to raise their hand to give a suggestion, the one that I will give, I'm going to give you one, which is go back to the classics. People who wrote things really back in the days when there was no internet. I think it's usually quite interesting. There is one guy, David Ogilvy, quite known, obviously. So that's definitely one of the classics. But looking at the classical copywriters is maybe something that can be quite interesting. In addition to the new and fancy things, it's always nice to see like where did it start. I think it's quite something interesting. And we have I mentioned classical, but not Mad Men. Very good. My last question for you today will be this one is, so you gave a lot to the community today. You shared a lot of your ways of thinking, your experience, your love stories, your hate stories with insurances too. And my question to you is, what can people do for you? So you gave them a lot. Is there something that people can do for you to help you out?
What I really appreciate, and what I already mentioned in the beginning, is this: I feel very much in good company in this community. And I think what I want to say is just like sharing stories, sharing stuff, reaching out to each other, inviting each other to events and conferences. I think this is something that I really appreciate. Like connecting on LinkedIn. Hey, how are you doing? Let me know what you're thinking about and that stuff. I do this more and more because I really feel part of the strong community. And if the community lives through people who do this as well, this is what I would ask for.
A big thank you to you, Valentina, for taking the time to prepare yourself for today, for showing up, for being of service for the community. It's something that I truly appreciate, especially I know you personally, and you always were in a position of, oh, I don't like stages, it's not my place, blah, blah, blah. And you really did this in a service perspective and not in a show-off perspective. It's something that I deeply appreciate, and I think it's also deeply felt. So thank you so much to you, Valentina.
Thank you, Daniele. You're always providing this platform and being such an engaged member of this community is really, someone needs to do it, right?
A big thank you to you, Valentina, for all your insights, for all your time. Thank you to all of you for your questions, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Cheers. Bye-bye.